has been real progress. I think fair to say it's been relatively modest and relatively incremental to date, but the landmark practice-changing studies have led to improvements in outcome in metastatic disease and in the adjuvant setting that have improved people's survival with pancreas cancer. And I think it's important to make that note, right? Even with current therapies where they stand today, there are some people who have exceptional outcomes, but it's clearly not enough. So moving forward, biomarkers are defining how we approach this disease, and the traditional biomarker that's shown potential in pancreas cancer has been homologous repair deficiency, affecting a relatively small subset of people with this disease. But that has led to the precedent and established this paradigm. I think there are two other areas to highlight is in individuals who don't have a KRAS mutation, KRAS wild-type disease, there's actionable fusions that are targetable. And of course, we're now in the era of RAS targeting, and that's destined to have a profound impact on practice. So having been in this field for a while, drug development is reaching a new area of, or a new plateau in terms of interest. I think it's very exciting to see younger talent now focused on this disease, right? Historically, people didn't necessarily want to work in pancreas cancer. Wasn't a lot of funding, wasn't a lot of opportunity for career advancement, and potentially a lot of disappointments. But that's changing. We have people queuing up to want to work with us. I mean, not just me, but the community at large, which is exciting. And with the advent of targeting RAS and the absolute multitude of drugs that are now in early, mid, and already late-stage clinical development in an accelerated timeline is, again, very exciting. But it's not just that. There are other targets that are showing potential and some room for optimism with regard to immune targeting approaches and some of the new surface markers in this disease. So how does one keep focused and stay optimistic in this disease? I think at the end of the day, it's always very grounding to me is the person in front of us, and that's why we're there, right? And even though we love the excitement of research, we love the excitement of new drugs, the fact that even though you can't necessarily cure this disease, it's very humbling and gratifying how grateful patients and families are when people take time to care for them in the context of a very difficult and often challenging disease trajectory. So that, to me, is one of the things that is just, it's enormously rewarding, and there's no other way to describe it. But I love, too, the excitement of academics. I love the excitement of research. I love the excitement of potential for change, and we're seeing it. I know the numbers don't quite reflect that as yet in terms of statistics in this disease, but it is apparent in the clinic. People are living longer with, improved quality of life. Again, it's not where we all want it to be, but that change is tangible in the last few years. And I think it's courtesy of organizations like Pankind and all of the major advocacy organizations that support, talented young investigators, that support research and facilitate change. How do we take care of patients with this disease? I think it's an open dialogue, right? Understanding what their values, their interests, their goals, what the context of their family is. And I think most people recognize the challenges of the disease and, again, are just very grateful that a person takes the time to listen, to try to support them, to advocate for them, even though those changes or those treatment approaches don't result in the outcomes we all want. And that's part of it. I think it's also the fact that we practice as teams, so it's a large group of people that is very multidisciplinary, from the person who greets the patient and the family as they walk in the door, right? It matters that you're made welcome and that you're heard, and I think that's very important to people. I think it's also, too, that access to trials, access to the state-of-the-art, and access to the emerging innovation in this disease. And again, very fortunate to practice in a large, major organization that's prioritized pancreas cancer. And and we're just hopeful and grateful to be part of this change. So the question of what are the best endpoints for clinical trial measurement, and they are in some regards rigorous and defined and reproducible, and they're the ones that have been traditionally employed because we can measure them and we can quantitate them, and they're ones that are relatable to in the field. So ultimately, survival has the biggest impact. But I think the point you're making is that there are other measures that are equally important. And if people live healthier for longer with less symptom burden from their disease, even though the cancer may not be shrinking in a significant way, that's probably very meaningful. And as oncologists, we forget that the therapies we use, do incur a lot of toxicity. And we have to be mindful of that and respectful of that and ready to adapt. I think there's often in the field a reluctance to dose adjust and to step back a little bit. And it's, it requires, I think, judgment and comfort with the disease, but just remembering that each person is different and that we do need to think about tailoring our therapies. And even when it's not a targeted therapy, it can still be tailored and personalized to that individual. So quality of life measures are hard to measure. They are, there's lots of issues with how they're interpreted, and the era of patient-reported outcomes and incorporating those in trials, I think, is a helpful measure. But we still need, I think, better tools and better instruments to incorporate those and use them as, again, rigorous, reproducible endpoints. So how do we deal with change, and when change occurs quicker than expected? Well, I think this is the best problem ever to have, right? And in this disease, it's more than overdue by decades. Having said that, it does bring a lot of struggles, and right now we're witnessing that with literally queues of patients wanting the current latest therapies, and it's very hard to not be able to provide them. And I think patients sometimes see us as the gatekeepers. We're not. We want to have these drugs and be able to use them. We need accelerated paradigms to lead to more open access when drugs have reached a certain point. I think heretofore, because drugs have not been so active, the bar should be higher in the setting of where therapeutics are resulting in meaningful impacts, and it's evident to all. We need to think about that differently and make these agents available sooner, before they've met all the hurdles that they need to for long-term regulatory approval. And there are a lot of tensions between academics, between drug development, between regulatory authorities, between patients and advocacy communities, right, in terms of what the right way to do this is. But we need to be flexible and adaptable in our thinking. And I'm hoping, that this will change, and that we will see new ways of leading to agents getting to patients quicker. So I think, question of how can early access be facilitated and what's the discussion that's underway at the current time. I think right now it's in the hands of the pharmaceutical industry, and understandably there's a reluctance to have more widespread access to their agents until they're guaranteed that there's a path forward for them. And maybe instead of this being a positive phase 3, this needs to happen when a robust signal has been seen in a couple of trials in a mid-phase study, for example. And I think we need new ways to do this, and getting all the stakeholders at the table talking and communicating is key. But there are not easy solutions here. There's a lot of vested interests, and I think we all have to understand that. But it's good to see that things are happening more quickly than they were in the past. Yeah, challenges in pancreas cancer are many, no question about it, but this is a challenge we'll accept every day, right? When we have drugs that work, and it should be easy to figure out how to get them to the person that needs them expeditiously, but it's not as straightforward. Having said that, I think we're all optimistic that we'll have the first regulatory approval in 2026, and that will be a landmark in this disease for a targeted therapy that could affect a large population of people with pancreas cancer. So if I wasn't a doctor, what would I have done in life? Goodness, maybe a scientist. I think I would enjoy, to some degree. I'm not a wet lab person, but I like that. I love to read. I love something in the arts, and I love music. So they're the things that I enjoy. But I've never had anything else in mind but being a physician. It runs in the family, so I've had it coming in left ear and right for a long time. And but yes, no, I love what I do.